Welcome to the store. Don't forget to subscribe, and support me.
The world had not seen the sun in years. Varnath, the evil god, had cast his shadow over the land, and under his reign, every glimmer of light had been devoured. Cities once bustling with life now stood silent and cold, cloaked in a never-ending night. Most of the people had either succumbed to the darkness or been enslaved by Varnath's monstrous servants. For those who remained free, hope was a fragile ember, barely kept alive by whispers of rebellion and a dwindling resistance. Alex trudged through the ruined streets of a long-abandoned town, his footsteps echoing against the cracked stone. His cloak, tattered and threadbare, hung heavily on his shoulders, offering little protection against the biting cold. The town had once been vibrant, filled with laughter, warmth, and light. Now, only shadows lingered, their presence oppressive and ever watchful. For years, Alex had wandered from one place to another, a monk without a temple, a soldier without an army. He had been part of the Holy Order of Lumen, once the protectors of light, but Varnath's rise had shattered the order, scattering its members across the darkened world. Alex had survived the fall, but many of his brothers and sisters had not. Their light had been extinguished, leaving him alone in a world where darkness reigned. He had heard rumors of a resistance forming in the southern lands, groups of rebels trying to fight back against Varnath's rule. But he had seen no evidence of it in his travels. Instead, he found only fear and despair, people hiding in the ruins, barely surviving, waiting for the inevitable day when Varnath's servants would find them and drag them into the shadow. But Alex wasn't ready to give up. Not yet. In his hand, he carried a small, glowing orb, the holy light device he had crafted after months of studying ancient scriptures and forgotten relics. It wasn't much, just a faint glow in the overwhelming darkness, but it was something. And it was the first glimmer of hope he'd had in years. As he approached the town square, the air grew thick with tension. Alex could feel the presence of the night spawn, Varnath's shadow creatures, lurking in the alleys and crumbling buildings. They were always watching, always waiting, drawn to any hint of light. But tonight, Alex was prepared. He tightened his grip on the orb, feeling the warmth of its glow seep into his skin, and stepped into the square. The night spawn stirred, their inky forms slithering from the shadows, their red eyes gleaming with hunger. Alex had encountered them before, beings of pure darkness, born from Varnath's power, feeding on fear and light alike. They were nearly invincible in the dark, but the holy light device had a different effect on them. As the first of the night spawn lunged at him, Alex raised the orb high, and the light flared, bright and brilliant. The creature recoiled, hissing as the light seared its shadowy form. It retreated into the darkness, its body writhing in pain, but Alex knew better than to celebrate too early. The light wouldn't hold them off for long. He needed to move, to find shelter before the night spawn gathered their strength and attacked again. The orb had its limits, and while it could repel the creatures for a time, it couldn't keep them at bay forever. He made his way to the far side of the square, where the remnants of an old temple stood, its walls crumbling but still offering some protection from the elements. Inside, he found a small group of survivors huddled together, their faces pale and gaunt, their eyes wide with fear. You're the monk," one of them whispered, a young woman with dark circles under her eyes. "The one with the light." Alex nodded, holding up the orb. "It's not much, but it'll keep the night spawn away for now." The survivors gathered around him, their gazes fixated on the glowing orb as if it were the last star in a blackened sky. Alex could see the hope flickering in their eyes, fragile but still alive. It was enough to remind him why he had kept fighting all these years. "There's a resistance," Alex said, his voice low but firm. "In the southern lands. We need to get there." It's the only way we can fight back against Varnath." The survivors exchanged nervous glances. One of the older men, his face lined with age and weariness, shook his head. "We'll never make it. The dark border is too dangerous. No one who crosses it ever returns." Alex met the man's gaze, unflinching. "We'll make it. With this light, we have a chance." It wasn't much of a plan, but it was all they had. Alex knew the journey would be perilous. Crossing the dark border was a death sentence for most, but he also knew that staying behind, waiting for the night spawn to find them, was no better. They had to take the risk. Over the next few days, Alex worked tirelessly, repairing the holy light device and teaching the survivors how to harness its power. Slowly, the group grew more confident, their fear giving way to determination. They weren't warriors, but they were willing to fight. And with Alex leading them, they had a chance. They set out at dusk, when the night spawn were less active, moving quickly through the abandoned streets and into the wilderness beyond. The journey was fraught with danger. Varnatha's minions were everywhere, watching from the shadows, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. But Alex kept the holy light device close, its glow guiding them through the treacherous landscape. As they neared the dark border, the air grew colder, and the darkness seemed to press in on them from all sides. The survivors grew quiet, their nerves fraying under the weight of the encroaching shadow. Even Alex could feel the pull of despair gnawing at his resolve, but he couldn't afford to show weakness now. He had to be strong for them, for the hope they still clung to. The dark border was a vast, desolate wasteland where light had no power. It was said that Varnath had torn a hole in the very fabric of reality, creating a place where darkness ruled absolutely. No one who entered ever returned, but Alex wasn't just anyone. He had the holy light device, and he had faith. As they approached the border, the ground beneath their feet turned to ash, and the air became thick with the stench of death. In the distance, Alex could see the twisted towers of Varnatha's fortress, looming like dark sentinels over the wasteland. "We're close," Alex said, his voice barely a whisper. "Stay together. Don't let the darkness take hold." The survivors nodded, their faces pale but determined. They trusted him, and he couldn't let them down. Just as they reached the edge of the dark border, a figure stepped out from the shadows. Alex tensed, gripping the orb tightly, ready to unleash its light. But the figure didn't attack. Instead, it raised its hands in surrender. "I'm not your enemy," the figure said, stepping closer. It was a man, thin and gaunt, his clothes ragged and torn. "I was sent by the resistance." Alex narrowed his eyes, wary. "How do I know you're telling the truth?" The man smiled, though it was a weak, weary smile. "Because I've been waiting for you, Alex. We've been waiting for the light." Alex's grip tightened around the holy light device as he studied the man standing before him. His appearance, ragged and gaunt, didn't give Alex much confidence. But there was something in his eyes, a glimmer of hope, of recognition, that kept him from turning the stranger away. "We've been watching you for weeks," the man continued. "The light you carry, it's been a beacon to us. The resistance is stronger than you think. But Varnatha's forces are closing in, and we need to move quickly." The survivors behind Alex shifted nervously. None of them had expected to meet anyone here, much less someone claiming to be from the resistance. Trust was fragile, and betrayal could come from anywhere. Alex knew that better than most. "If you're with the resistance, where are the others?" Alex asked, keeping his voice steady but firm. "Why are you alone?" The man's smile faltered, his gaze dropping to the ashen ground. "I wasn't always alone. Varnatha's minions, they've been hunting us relentlessly. I was sent ahead to find you, to guide you to safety. The others are waiting for us, but we have to hurry." Alex could hear the desperation in the man's voice, see the fear in his eyes. This wasn't a trap, it was the plea of someone who had seen too much death, too much darkness. He nodded slowly, lowering the orb but keeping it close to his chest. "Lead the way." The man, who introduced himself as Elias, guided them along a narrow path that wound through the wasteland. The shadows seemed to press closer as they moved deeper into the dark border, and the air grew colder with every step. The holy light device flickered, its glow struggling to cut through the oppressive darkness, but Alex pushed forward, refusing to let doubt take hold. The survivors followed closely, their trust in Alex stronger than their fear of the dark. They whispered among themselves, their voices hushed but filled with hope. For the first time in years, they felt like they had a chance. Alex didn't allow himself to share that hope just yet. The path ahead was treacherous, and Varnatha's forces were always watching. After hours of silent travel, they reached a small cave nestled in the side of a rocky cliff. Elias motioned for them to enter, and Alex led the way inside. The cave was cold and damp, but it offered shelter from the endless night. At the far end of the cave, a fire crackled, casting long shadows on the walls. A group of figures huddled around the fire, their faces gaunt and tired, but their eyes bright with determination. As Alex and the others entered, one of them stood, a woman with sharp features and short-cropped hair. She stepped forward, her eyes narrowing as she took in Alex and the holy light device he carried. "You must be the monk," she said, her voice low but commanding. "The one with the light." "I am," Alex replied, meeting her gaze. "And you are?" "Lara," she said. "Commander of this little group. You've been a hard man to find." "I wasn't aware anyone was looking for me," Alex said, his tone cautious but curious. "We've heard the rumors," Lara continued, her eyes flicking to the orb. "A holy light that can drive back the night spawn. We didn't believe it at first, but then we saw it with our own eyes. You've given us something we haven't had in a long time, monk, hope." Alex glanced at the survivors who had followed him through the darkness. Their eyes were fixed on Lara, waiting for some kind of reassurance, some kind of plan. He turned back to her. "Hope isn't enough to defeat Varnath. We need more than just light. We need a way to fight." Lara's lips pressed into a thin line. "That's why we brought you here. The resistance is scattered, disorganized. We've been fighting in the shadows for years, but without a way to unite the factions, we're as good as lost. But with that light," she pointed to the holy device in Alex's hand, "we can turn the tide. We can give people something to rally behind." Alex felt the weight of her words settle heavily on his shoulders. He had never wanted to be a leader, never asked to carry the burden of an entire rebellion. But as he looked around the cave, at the tired faces and flickering flames, he realized that the choice wasn't his anymore. The people needed him, needed the light he carried. "We'll need more than just hope and faith," Alex said, his voice steady. "Varnatha's forces are strong, and the dark border is only the beginning. If we're going to stand a chance, we need to strike at the heart of his power." Lara nodded, her expression grim. "That's why we've been waiting for you. There's a place, a sacred place, deep within the dark border. The legends say it's where the first light was born, where the sacred flame still burns. If we can find it, if we can reignite it, we might have a chance to destroy Varnath once and for all." The sacred flame. Alex had heard stories of it as a young monk, tales whispered by the elders of Lumen. It was said to be the purest source of light, capable of burning away even the darkest of evils. But no one had seen it in centuries. Most believed it was nothing more than a myth, a tale to comfort the desperate, but Alex wasn't so sure anymore. If the light in his hand was real, if the holy device could push back the darkness, then maybe the sacred flame was real too. And maybe it was their only hope. How do we find it? Alex asked, his voice quieter now, more introspective. Lara glanced at Elias, then back to Alex. That's the hard part. It's said to be hidden within Varnatha's fortress, guarded by his most powerful minions. No one who's ventured into the fortress has ever returned. We don't have any other options, Alex said, his voice firmer now. We'll go to the fortress. We'll find the sacred flame, and we'll use it to destroy Varnath. Lara smiled, a rare glimmer of hope crossing her hardened features. Then we'll need to gather the rest of the resistance. There are pockets of fighters spread throughout the dark border. If we can unite them, we'll stand a chance of reaching the fortress. The next few days were a blur of preparation and strategy. Word of Alex's holy light spread quickly through the remnants of the resistance, drawing rebels from all corners of the dark border. They came in ragged groups, armed with whatever weapons they could scavenge, their eyes filled with the same determination that Alex had seen in the survivors who had followed him. The plan was simple but dangerous. They would infiltrate Varnatha's fortress under the cover of darkness, using the holy light to weaken his forces. Once inside, they would search for the sacred flame and reignite it, hoping that its power would be enough to destroy Varnath and break his hold over the world. As the day of the assault approached, Alex found himself standing alone on a cliff overlooking the wasteland. The holy light device pulsed gently in his hand, its warmth comforting against the chill of the night. He could feel the weight of the coming battle pressing down on him, the uncertainty of what lay ahead, but there was no turning back now. Too many lives depended on him. Too much had been sacrificed already. Lara approached him, her footsteps soft on the rocky ground. "You ready for this?" she asked, her voice quieter than usual. Alex nodded, though the knot in his stomach told him otherwise. "I don't think anyone's ever ready for something like this. But it's the only way." She stood beside him, staring out at the dark horizon. "You've done more than any of us could have asked. No matter what happens tomorrow, you've given us a chance." Alex glanced at her, surprised by the softness in her tone. He had grown used to her stern leadership, her unflinching determination. But here, now, she seemed vulnerable, just like the rest of them. "I couldn't have done it alone," Alex said. "We'll do this together." Lara smiled faintly. Together. The next night, they moved swiftly through the wasteland, their numbers bolstered by the scattered factions of the resistance. The fortress loomed in the distance, its dark spires piercing the sky like jagged teeth. Varnatha's minions patrolled the area, but the holy light kept them at bay, its glow flickering as Alex led the way. As they neared the entrance to the fortress, Alex could feel the tension in the air, the fear and anticipation that gripped every member of the resistance. This was it, the final battle. There would be no turning back. The gates of the fortress creaked open, and the first of Varnatha's minions charged toward them. The resistance fought fiercely, their weapons clashing against the dark creatures as Alex pushed forward, the holy light burning brighter with every step. The battle raged for what felt like hours, but finally, they reached the inner sanctum. There, at the heart of the fortress, stood Varnath himself, a towering figure of shadow and malice. Alex raised the holy light, its glow searing through the darkness as he stepped forward to face the god of darkness.